Let's try this again. Reintroduce myself here. Trash. Take two on the live stream. Because for some reason, when I first went live, it wasn't going to YouTube, so I had to start the stream over again. Well, it is March the 4th. We're back in March again. We're having another March. And it feels like the same long, extended March. So sorry for starting the show a little late. I was kind of talking for a few minutes just on Facebook there. Didn't realize it was just on Facebook. So that kind of sucks. So yeah, we're going to start over again here. I am Jimmy Ruffian reporting live from downtown Toronto. We're going to cover a few things like COVID in Canada and what's going on with the Uyghurs in China. Yeah, I'll get a little bit more into that in a minute, but let's hop into... There we go. Yeah. All right. So thank you once again for watching The Rough Report. And if you are joining us live, always remember to say hello and leave some comments in the stream. We love to hear from you. I'm going to start off by showing just a little bit of the last episode of The National, because it talks about a bit about Canada's vaccine rollout and how that's been going, or rather not going. And it's just like hard to say at this point, given the evidence, how much longer we're going to have to put up with this. And it's kind of, even if that pisses you off, I mean, I can't quite blame you, because it's pretty annoying at this point. Especially in terms of, Doug Ford's handling of this, when you're talking about how, the open and shut. Let's get the economy opening again. And then... of course, the cases start to go up again and things get a little more dire. And then you're forced to actually listen to the advice of medical experts and shut down again. And it's kind of like this yo-yo effect that you just keep going back to it. Goes down, it comes up, goes down, it comes up. I don't know if I needed to explain to you how a yo-yo works, but it did. That's what yo-yos do. All right, so where was that first marker here? All right, let's get that going there.
Well, to Canada's vaccine rollout now. The Trudeau government has long said that any Canadian who wants to be vaccinated will be by September. That is still 6 months away, but the Prime Minister couldn't stop dropping hints about that timeline.
It's possible those timelines move forward. It's possible that those timelines be moved forward. We're also very optimistic that they're going to be able to be moved forward.
Yeah. It's like, is that super optimistic sounding? It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. At this point, at the rate that we've been going, and I think we'll have it later in this clip, I'm not sure. But basically, like at this point, only about less than 2% of the adult population has had both the shots, like both doses, which at this point seems to be pretty abysmal. Like, understandably, there's a very, very competitive world supply. There's a lot of people that need it before we do in certain ways. But it seems like, kind of this far into the game, only having that less than 2% of all people, when in order to reach, quote unquote, herd immunity, there we go, humunity, we need about 70%. So, shit. So yeah, not going well so far. And then his reaction there seeming shaky, like, it's possible. We're hoping. We're optimistic.
But there is still a long way to go. The bar to hit herd immunity is a vaccination rate of around 70%. But after months of vaccinations, less than 1.5% of Canadians have received their full 2 doses. So now some provinces have decided that getting that second dose on time is perhaps less important than getting as many first doses into as many arms as possible. And that
yeah, like the provinces are just deciding that. Like, did they just suggest that, they know that what really makes this thing work is the 2 shots, but they're like, it's just okay if you don't get the second one? Well, it does go on to explain this a bit more. Let's unpack this.
That tactic now has the official blessing of the federal government. Christine Birak shows us the risks, the benefits, and the science behind delaying that second dose.
Now, it's like, I don't want to be Mr. Conspiracy Theorist here, but if they, it just seems a little bit, if people are already paranoid about how this vaccine thing has been going, it's just not going to help. And as science changes, it's a day-to-day thing, especially when you're dealing with a new disease, and you literally do get new information on the daily, and you have to sort of remain flexible in understanding in your mentality in that sort of way. But I mean, specifically for the people who are already paranoid about this sort of thing, the government shorting up on getting vaccines, coupled with the information that maybe that's not a bad thing after all, is it's kind of rife for the comedy. You gotta admit. But again, it's like, that you don't know these things until they happen, right?
Still need 2 doses, but in some provinces, instead of 4 weeks apart, you might.
And the science behind delaying that second dose.
The beginning there.
You still need 2 doses, but in some provinces, instead of 4 weeks apart, you might get them up to 4 months apart.
So you still need 2 doses. You got to be clear about that. But what does it mean to take them 4 months apart? That actually, on second thought, doesn't sound so alarming, does it? 4 months apart. But it hasn't been really like 4 months since we've had this data. So we don't really know for sure. Like, we see a downturn in people who have had the first shot. It is showing that it boosts your immune system. But at the same time, like, are we going to be able to get those second shots within the 4 months if this is the strategy we're going to take? It's right that people are kind of like shifting their chairs and concerned, especially after being inside for a year. But, let cooler heads prevail here and understand that, again, the science as we learn thing is going to change on a regular basis. So when something kind of shocks you like that, where you're kind of like sit up and go like, that, doesn't seem right. I don't know. There's a lot of things that doesn't seem right that are. That seems lazy, and I am being a little bit lazy about it, but I just want to move on to the next point.
This will allow us to protect close to 40,000 extra people with one dose of a highly effective vaccine by the end of March.
Now, Canada's National Advisory Committee on Vaccines says that plan is fine, saying while studies have not yet collected 4 months of data on vaccine effectiveness after the first dose, the first 2 months of real-world effectiveness are showing sustained high levels of protection. That's more confidence than we heard just days ago.
Science evolves. We learn more. So what I told you last week was this, because that's what we knew. Now we know more.
The Lancet has just released.
And they're going, and what's more is they're going to base what they know, and they're going to tell you what they know based on the safest thing to do given the criteria that they have. So if there is an unknown factor, you have to already protect yourself against that unknown factor. Like at a time where we weren't quite sure how COVID traveled between surface to surface, or even if it could, we were still wiping down all those surfaces and should continue to wipe down all those surfaces to be on the safest side possible, even though at this point we understand that surface to surface transmission of this particular virus is it's less likely. It's more that we've been breathing each other's air in close quarters and within a certain distance that our breath can reach each other. That seems to be spreading this virus more than surface-to-surface contact. But again, even given that, you still do the most cautionary thing possible. So, to those kind of, I'm just more so sort of speaking to the anti-mask mentality, or the mentality that gets your back up because it's a crappy time out there. And of course your back is up, and I don't blame you. But, again, cooler heads prevail here. Err on the side of caution, right? I'm just going to make I don't know if that helped my mic sound at all. I hope it did.
Released this study out of the UK examining the effectiveness of a single dose in frail adults. Early results found that after 3 months, a single dose of Pfizer or Oxford AstraZeneca's vaccine led to a 70 to 80% drop in the risk of COVID-19 related hospitalization in elderly, frail patients.
If it can do this well in the frail elderly that are a wreck, okay, it's perfectly okay for the rest of us.
Once a COVID vaccine has shown your immune system a tiny piece of the virus, your body builds defenses that can last for months.
We don't know for sure that their immunity will stay high for the whole 4 months, so there may be a window of vulnerability when their immunity lags.
The second dose usually boosts that protection, so there are risks.
If we're giving too many people a delay in the second dose of vaccine, those people may get infected anyway and pass it on to other people.
Well, there you
That
go.
concern also extends to variants. Most doctors say old.
So, and yeah, mostly extends to the variants that we're now seeing pop up more and more often, that seem to spread a little bit easier. And I don't know. Our province's failure to seemingly get on these, province and the federal government, that is, failure to get on these vaccines. I don't know. Seems like they're definitely dropping the ball here, right? Like, yeah, as you saw, it was less than 1.5% of our total population, our adult population, has been vaccinated against this thing. And yeah, that just obviously like ain't a lot for us to reach like over 70% to get to the point where our society and country is more or less safe to kind of return to what you might call the before times or the normal times or what have you. It's not looking too good at this rate. But at the same time, there's this timeline that basically says they're going to basically have the adult population done by before Canada Day or by Canada Day. And that's the plan going forward. And again, optimism from Trudeau, but we'll see how far that goes. Because, if we're basing our stuff on or our feelings or projections or optimism for the future based on how things have been going so far, I think a lot of us are running out a bit of gas here. And the misinformation stuff isn't helping any. And here you have Kenny, old Kenny boy here, even getting upset at the misinformation. And yeah, it's just kind of odd hearing it come from him, considering the amount of misinformation that he regularly courts.
All right, Dallas O'Regan says, are you working with Trudeau and Klaus Schwab on the Great Reset? No, Dallas, I am. No, I'm not. And the Great Reset is a concept, really, of quotes using the pandemic crisis to advance what Klaus Schwab would call social democratic, or some people might call socialist ideas about redistribution, high levels of taxation, environmental policies with which I strongly disagree. We've been absolutely clear about that. And so, I think where the...
Yeah, when Jason Kenney's even getting it, I guess maybe that's when he's willing to correct the information, is when you accuse him of being on the side of the supposed commie globalists in what is it, the World Economic Forum. The yeah, when you it's just so funny to even think about, like, the World Economic Forum is going to be the this force, and they're even calling it like the Great Reset, and and at first like what sort of like thing did they think that was going to inspire in your most tinfoil hat wearing folk? It's like they were like it wanted to inspire fear into them. It's almost like a troll in a way, calling it the Great Reset. But and Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and leader of the World Economic Forum, hence why they were asking Jason Kenney about him, because there's no doubt that somebody who would ask Jason Kenney that question is thinking Trudeau is definitely part of that whole thing, right? And to think that these essentially right-wing liberals are on the side of some sort of like socialist conspiracy is hilarious. But yeah, aside from that, we'll get into that a little bit more. But I want to hear a little bit more from from Kenny Boy here.
The question is coming from is a view that any government that applies any kind of public health restrictions to limit viral spread during the pandemic is somehow part of a global conspiracy. And folks, here's the reality. This is not a conspiracy.
Okay, so a couple things there. When he's talking about, just because we're coming up with a few policies that might keep people from dying and be better for their health, doesn't mean we're part of some massive conspiracy. How does that compare and how does that relate, do you think, to the very policies that actual socialists would want to put forward, such as expanding to pharmacare and dental care, such as giving more union power, such as, whether it be through union power or straight up legislation, you expand the lowest wages and lift them up, and have tax reform that actually taxes the wealthiest earners and make that kind of progress. How do you suppose that they'll happily feed on that hate and rage of the far right and expand upon it and expand upon get the votes based on conspiracy theory and the very notions that now he finds himself trying to argue against. And the best he can say is over and over, well, it's not a conspiracy, look at this graph. And anybody that's truly conspiracy minded like this doesn't give a shit about this graph. They don't care about that. That's ridiculous. But this is all he's got, right? So I don't know. I don't know if anybody who would honestly ask Jason Kenney that question is going to be convinced by this sort of answer. But I can't help but to feel like this is the kind of he's reaping what he sowed here, right? When you've been cultivating and attracting the racist bigot vote, the anti-liberal vote, the conspiracy that anybody is to the right of or to the left of anything right is thusly an insane Marxist that's looking to take over with an authoritarian boot, while you yourself side with people laying down authoritarian boots just because it looks like a different color, different shade. Okay, I'm just going to queue up the next video here. Give me a second. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about conspiracy theorists and hate mongering and the things that come with that, the Ale House in London for months has been promoting, and you'll see how this relates back to what I'm talking about, but they've been promoting all sorts of hateful messages, even getting upset at conservative Premier Doug Ford. With the signs that they keep putting outside the bar. Mr. Ford, history will show lockdowns caused more damage to the public than the China virus. And, it's pretty obvious the dog whistles and racist connotations that would come with calling it something like the China virus. All the variants that have come out of England and things like that. We're not calling it the UK virus all of a sudden, are we? Or the UK variants. For some reason, that's not really a term that's stuck on. but for a lot of people, China virus, or the Chinese virus, or the Wuhan flu, or whatever sort of other miseducated, hateful nonsense came out. But more or less, that stuff seems to have quieted down. So I guess kudos there. So, you know, and there's like other examples of this. We love Chinese people. I guess this is a follow-up to the last one. We love Chinese people. We hate the genocide and China virus your commie government has afflicted on us. Is he saying like China and the commie government inflicted genocide upon him? Like in us, as in like Canadians? Seems kind of nuts. And then what is it? Calling out oppressive government is not racist, period. We have love, respect for all people. A little heart there. So the typical like kind of just like ignorant stuff where they're kind of racist and backwards, and because they have been taught what being racist is not this for some convenient reason. So when people tell them that, they're kind of like appalled. But then here is, let's expand this. Here's Jason Kenney, the local pub offering patrons a chance to drink away their sorrows after Kadir payout, like Omar Kadir, which was the right thing to do, which was also, you know, echoing the precedent that even Stephen Harper had set, but for some reason nobody was mad at Stephen Harper when he did it. But whatever. Relax in our lush back beer garden, drink to forget our selfie boy wimp PM who has shamed us. Can't help but to feel like selfie boy wimp was, you know, injected in there and replacing something that much more vulgar that they would have rather have said. Yeah. And then, yeah, there's Jason Kenney right underneath saying there, my new favorite local in London. You know, this type of people he's willing to hop on and agree with and cultivate their attention and cultivate on their ignorance. But, you know, heaven forbid when it blows back in your direction, right? So, speaking of the World Economic Forum here, kind of like skipping on into sort of another subject. We're going to look at that. And this is a video that the World Economic Forum put out trying to explain what the Great Reset is. And to anybody who kind of hears that and is already paranoid about, you know, lefties taking over the world as a giant conspiracy, even though, you know, I don't know if you watch this show at all, you know how much I make fun of that concept. But yeah, like, it's like there's no winning in this. Like, they don't realize, because like when people are going to be paranoid about this stuff, they're going to be paranoid about this stuff. They're going to watch this video and go, oh, this is all the more reason to be paranoid of what they're saying, because the conspiracy is everywhere. They're always trying to convince me, man.
The pandemic has radically changed the world as we know it, and the actions we take today as we work to recover will define our generation.
Now is the time to think what history would say about this crisis.
2020 has been challenging on a lot of levels, as economic, environmental, and societal frailties have been laid bare. But it's also proved that when we need to, we can act rapidly and restructure our lives.
The recovery from the pandemic is an opportunity. We can see rays of hope in the form of a vaccine, but there is no vaccine for the planet. Nature needs a bailout.
See, this sounds like all positive stuff. Nature needs a bailout. Like, we know this stuff to be true. We know that we need to reapproach equality. This sounds all very positive. Like, you know, What's the drawback? Well, you know, the World Economic Forum has never been exactly on the side of working people, obviously. The sort of think tank that they've operated under has always operated through the lens of what would most protect capitalism. I'll always promote taking progress where we can get it that would benefit people while curbing capitalist power. And maybe not getting rid of it or the foundations of it or the things that are ultimately the problem. But if it can relieve a myriad of symptoms that improves people's lives, that's definitely something we got to take and then exploit that to say, hey, see how that thing advanced our lives? How about we do more of that? That's the thing we always have to be pushing for, and that's the thing we have to take advantage of in this moment. There's no, like, you know, saying, oh, it's a lie with the World Economic Forum. It's just like, use the fact that that you can sell this idea and that you can advance the idea and then point out, okay, we got this. We can go beyond it because the World Economic Forum, think they're on our side? No. But even if they're going this far, there's a point to be made there.
Yeah. Want to go back to the status quo that you had before simply because it was the status quo that got us here.
With everything falling apart, we can reshape the world in ways we couldn't before. Ways that better address so many of the challenges we face. And that's why so many are calling for a great reset. A great reset? That sounds more like buzzword bingo masking some nefarious plan for world domination. Hands up. This kind of slogan hasn't gone down well. But all we really want to say is that we all have an opportunity to build a better world. And it's not surprising that people who've been disenfranchised by a broken system and pushed even further by the pandemic will suspect global leaders of conspiracy. But the world's not that simple. Every one of us has differing...
Well, of course it's not that simple, but, you know, coming from you, I don't know how that's supposed to be convincing, you know? Not saying that people are right in either direction. I'm not promoting the conspiracy theory brain here. But, you know, this coming from the World Economic Forum, it just seems really rich, right? So there's an ultimate point in this video where I think it kind of like exposes its hand on, even though it's saying all these nice things about economic and environmental progress, that you're going to get snagged on a fundamental problem that is a tenet of Marxism, essentially.
Priorities, values, and ideas. That's part of why solutions are so hard to come by, and why we all need to be involved in the decision-making. Because whether it's politicians, CEOs, academics, activists, or you, we're all about getting people together, even those you may not like, to sit down at the table and develop solutions that work for all of us. But
we need enormous trust between the private sector and the public sector for this to actually work. That trust is hard to come by.
No kidding. That trust is hard to come by. What are you like? Well, this is the CEO of MasterCard you're talking about here. So, you know, you can't expect anybody sitting in the executive chair of a credit card company to honestly have some kind of soul when it comes to this sort of thing. I think they'd participate in the nice sounding aspects of what the World Economic Forum is saying here because they perhaps find it some sort of redemption on their soul for the fundamental crime against humanity that their job existing is. Yeah, it's like rich, considering the sources. Who are rich? Yeah, there has to be enormous trust between the private and public sector. First of all, depending on what part of the private and public sector you're talking about, it's very hard to tell the difference because one has pocketed the other. The private sector owns the public sector in so many ways and bends over backwards to appease the private sector and its energy needs, its financial needs. This is where the thing breaks down, because now we're listening to CEOs. Now they're inviting the powerful that have caused this problem in the first place and inviting them to sit down at the table and pretend that their voice is just equal in this. When, if you're not holding them accountable for the crimes that they've already committed against humanity at all, and then on top of that, saying that those same people should have a seat at the table, I don't know what to tell you here. I think you're off to a bad start. Again, I would take it. I would take any bit of progress we can if this is a thing, if this great reset idea is something that's going to catch on and we can expand upon that and use that moment to actually help people, then great. But I don't know. You're hearing the same thing I'm hearing there, right? We know if you give the already rich and the already powerful and the already influential who have caused all these problems a seat at this table, they are just going to be the table. And at best, you're going to get a sense of something looks like it's getting done, but it's not actually, nothing's actually happening, which is more of the same of what you're getting now, obviously. Wow. So as much as I'd want to believe that, like a body like the World Economic Forum is going to actually do a great reset on capitalism while inviting the very people who have caused this problem to have a say, with like zero incentive to do the right thing or accountability towards the wrong things they've already done. This is a non-starter, right? What are you going to do? How do you go up from there?
Time for people to work together, listen to each other, and build this trust so we can move towards a better world.
To listen to us forever.
And we really need one. Because while the pandemic affects us all, it's clear it affects some more than others.
The first people who are hit are the people at the front, those who are vulnerable. It is those on the front line who take it first, and that is simply unacceptable.
See, at the start of 2020, 1% of the world's population owned 44% of the wealth. And since the start of the pandemic, billionaires have increased theirs by more than 25%, whilst 150 million people fell back into extreme poverty. And with climate change set to dwarf the damage caused by the pandemic, the message from 2020 should be abundantly clear.
Capitalism, as we know it, is dead. This obsession that we have had with maximizing profits for shareholders alone has led to incredible inequality and a planetary emergency.
All right, what was his title again? Oh yeah, Salesforce, CEO of Salesforce. Like headphone head in the back there, so tough to hair sticking up. Anyway. Jeez. I can hear my kitten snoring on the bed over there. Yeah. Capitalism as we know it is dead, but what direction are you taking that in? Right? You're just going to have like some sense of eco-fascism. This is all fluffy stuff, right? Like, I don't know. If you are feeling suspicious of the motivations of what this organization is saying, despite what it sounds like it's saying is good, I think you are having a good functioning critical mind there. I think you're doing all right. You have, I'm not saying put on the tinfoil hat and say these are the globalists that are coming to get you, and this is everything that every MAGA hat wearing fool wants to warn you about. But from a leftist perspective, they're not going to do the leftist thing that they're talking about. That's pretty obvious. This is still going to be their ultimate goal here is to find a way to just preserve capitalism and bail capitalism itself out so it can continue and continue to be damaging in its way. Offer a bit of temporary relief to the vulnerable people and lift them up. But, you know, after a certain amount of time, when people get comfortable again, this is the ultimate problem when it comes down to like Marx's critique of capitalism, that there's always going to be this divide of the classes. As long as there is a less powerful class of people that has to sell their labor to a class of people that do not and are able to collect obscene amounts of money off of that labor, you're always going to have a fundamental divide in interests and motivations and morality. There isn't a whole lot of room for compromise there. So anyway, yeah, it's just goofy stuff. To think that this is like what the big conspiracy is about. These are the people that are coming to get you. CEOs, stuff like that. Yeah, okay. The same people that are against labor organizations are the same people that want to implement world communism. I don't know how far I would trust that. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit here. Let's see. Now, yeah, when it comes to China and the situation with the Uyghurs, the Chinese Muslim population, yeah, there gets to a point where there's these like online China stands that, you know, I get it, where there's a lot of xenophobia out there that is disgusting and, you know, wasn't helped by COVID and isn't helped by, you know, the ongoing Red Scare that has anything named communism, you know, just associated with this enemy that's coming to get you. And that ridiculous kind of propaganda. But also at the same time, you have these China stands that will make these like excuses for anything that they do, which, you know, obviously there's a lot of criticism that could potentially happen there. And this whole situation with the Uyghurs is one of them. I would highly promote people learning whatever they can about this situation from both sides. And I think what you would determine is the same thing that most people would determine, is that what they're doing is, you know, it's classic neo-colonialism. or just straight up colonialism, and basically trying to force a population to assimilate. And, you know, I've seen the sort of reporting go in the other direction that says, you know, there is no Uyghur genocide, even if you want to go as far as to call it that. You know, what you would, you know, there's people that argue about that. I'm not even caring to get into the aspects of that argument right now, but that's, you know, just a word that's been used to describe this. You know, saying that it's not happening at all. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? Somebody saying a genocide didn't really happen, or people being murdered didn't really happen, when it clearly did. Not saying anything in either direction in that case, but it's just not a good explanation. And it's not a good, like, as far as being a Western Canadian lefty thinker, us spending an exorbitant amount of time or energy trying to argue about whether a human tragedy and act of totalitarianism essentially was on purpose or not. Oh, excuse me, or was bad or not. Having that argument, again, when you're just like, if you're trying to radicalize the person sitting next to you, that doesn't seem like a wise direction to take that conversation. If somebody said to me, like, well, what about the Uyghurs in China? I would say, hey, man, I don't know much about that. But what I do know is that, you know, if we band together, we can get ourselves some higher wages. If we threaten to strike, if we threaten to, you know, do so many things when we organize to benefit each other. We can build a better world. Do you think, like, talking about this stuff where it's like you got Chinese propaganda telling you nothing is happening at all and it's fake news, such as this? This is the Chinese ambassador being asked a question by a British reporter.
My name is Richard Bilton. I'm a reporter for BBC Panorama. I wrote to you this week, sir, actually, about the camps in Xinjiang. I know that they are prison camps. Why won't you tell me the truth about those camps?
First of all, I would say there's no so-called labor camps, as you described. There's what we call vocational education and training centers. They are there for the prevention of a terrorist.
With respect, sir, I have seen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have seen the orders that are sent to the prison camps, and they are prisons.
What order you have? You mean the order said this is a prison camps?
They are orders for the people who run the camps, and they're quite clear that this is a prison camp.
This is a pure
Sir,
fabrication.
it's true,
Let
and
me
they're
tell
brainwashing
you what
camps.
is happening.
They change the way people behave, what they believe, even the language they speak. So they are brainwashing camps, aren't they?
I think there's no such order for prison camps. You know, in Xinjiang, religious freedom is fully respected.
Just to be clear, the documents I've seen make it quite clear that people are held there. Hundreds of thousands of people are held in these camps across Xinjiang. What you're telling me bears no relation to what I've seen.
The document, so-called document you're talking about, is a pure fabrications. Don't listen to fake news. Don't listen to fabrications.
You know, there's just something about that guy's delivery and his uneasy stepping and body language and things like that that sort of say to me that he wasn't really being exactly honest in his speaking there. Like, oh, they're just like re-education camps. And it's like, you know what, as a part of me as a leftist is going like, talking about re-educating people and unlearning and stuff like that. It's an important process that people have to go through when you've been soaking in capitalist propaganda your entire life. I think it's something like, just educating people is an important thing. But I think what they're talking about is obviously what this British reporter is accusing him of is a bit more than just re-educating somebody, right? It sounds akin to the residential school problem that we experienced here in Canada. Towards the indigenous population. We essentially created these schools to commit genocide and destroy the native way of life. That was the intent. So I don't know. I have seen the articles that try and claim that there's none of this that is happening, but none of it is compelling. Like it was like signs in taxi cabs basically saying, look, there's the Uyghur language right next to the Han language in Mandarin. Why would they have these signs next to each other if they were trying to erase them? And it's like, that's not very convincing, to be honest. Americans want Spanish people to assimilate as much as possible, but they still offer Spanish in a lot of ways because it's just expedient. Because people still have to communicate. You can't just simply make the language disappear overnight. It's a process of, say, putting them in camps, potentially. Trudeau withdrew himself from voting on whether to call it a genocide or not. I don't know if that's a little bit of just like a very Canadian thing to do in terms of our own colonialism, or the fact that maybe he has his doubts about how apt the term genocide is here. I don't know how much I'd agree with that or not. But again, it's like, as Canadians, and as Canadian communists, leftists, socialists that maybe even believe and understand and promote some of the strategies that China has taken, to spend your energy trying to say that all of this is okay and don't listen to fake news is helping exactly no one. It's just like, doing this online tanky cosplay garbage is, regardless of whether you're right or wrong, regardless, just think of it from a strategic point of view. Who are you going to convince? Who are you trying to convince? What are you trying to win? It's not going to get people to sign up for the cause. It's going to get them to be suspicious of you and your intentions. Just, strategy, people, for the love of Christ. Anyway, I didn't get to the Andrew Cuomo stuff too much. Because the hour is almost up. And, that's just basically where we're at right now. Might have to do a little bit of a bonus episode on Sunday. Hop on for another hour and cover some of the stuff that we missed. Because there was a little bit more I wanted to talk about. I wanted to get into some points about the death of Rush Limbaugh. You know what? Maybe I'll do that really quick now since we have a few minutes. Let's throw this up on the screen. Did Rush Limbaugh's AIDS update mock the death of gay people? And this is from Snopes. Because, of course, there were tweets going around that were talking about this. And, of course, it's absolutely true. And I wanted to talk a bit about on the point of speaking ill of the dead and how these people say you shouldn't do it and how it's not good for your soul, or it says something bad about you and all these things. You know what says something bad about you? When you can stand there and say, hey, they had a family that loved them. And I'm sure they had good manners. I'm sure they were nice to the people around them. Hey, Elton John was friends with this guy. Well, he relished and laughed at and promoted hatred around the AIDS epidemic and said, you know, what gay people got it coming to them. It's exactly what he said. And so for every single queer person out there, like myself, to look at this and go, you know what, fuck that guy. I'll piss on his grave. I will relish in this man's death because he is a hateful piece of shit. And for you to look at me and go, but what about your soul? It's like, my soul feels fucking great. What about yours? What are you thinking that you have to cover for a guy like this? What are you worried about that you did in your life? That, you know, people might say about you after you die. Maybe work on worrying about that. That's okay, Jessica. Thank you for joining us. Happy birthday, by the way. Yeah. For you to stand there and say this righteous shit about this self-righteous shit about speaking ill of the dead, when disgusting, hateful assholes like this exist and existed, and to say, oh, you know, let his body cool down even. What does that even mean? Who gives a shit? He's dead. And he was an asshole while he lived. Maybe you should worry about the guests that you're gathering for your funeral. Because if the only people that are there to love you are a few immediate relatives and the hateful people around you helped make rich or helped make you rich, you didn't leave it a good life. It didn't matter if you said please or thank you and held the door open. And if you're a piece of shit in every other way, that's not a redeeming quality. What is this? Like, I'm sure he was a decent guy in his day-to-day, or like whatever other forgiving shit you hear about just awful people that experienced no repercussions while they were alive. In fact, they got nothing but praise for being awful. And now, the whole time he was alive, got nothing but praise for being awful. Now that he's dead, you still got to protect him? From what? It's ridiculous. I hate that shit. It's so just, it's some of the most performative, empty stuff. It gets right under my skin. I wish people who, like, you know, I get where it comes from. I get it. But when you start to unpack it at all, when you think about it from an empathetic point of view, where how people like this lived their lives, and then are able to say, well, you know, let his body cool down. What does that mean? People have a right to be, like, upset about playing apologetics for bigots like this. Come on. Anyway, I just wanted to say a couple quick points that I'll probably expand a little bit more on Sunday. Let's get to it. Canadian taxes are due April 30th. Look at that. Just a reminder that the reason you have to do your taxes instead of the government just doing them for you is that there's a lobby of accounting companies that pay the government to not make that a thing. So you have to pay them to do your taxes for you. It's a giant scam that companies literally pay and bribe the government, in a manner of speaking, through their legal means, to not make it so you can just mail your taxes in and get them done. Ridiculous. But anyway, I like reminding people of that every now and then. And take a look at the CPAC stage. We're going to be talking a little bit more on CPAC on the next episode for sure. That's interesting. That's something. Does that look familiar? Well, it's not quite a swastika, we know, but it is in fact a Nazi rune. It's a symbol that was used by the Nazis. You can see pictures of it, like how my Aston microphone pin is on my lapel here. Nazis had those on their uniforms. That's your American Conservative Union there. How about that? It's like, are these even dog whistles anymore? They're just straight up like just loudspeakers with out-of-tune recorders playing in a cacophony. Some sort of fucking nightmare hellscape that we're in. Yeah. So that's going to conclude today's show. Thank you for joining me while I was a little buzzed. This was one of the looser episodes I've done in a while. And I don't mean me like physically loose. It's just like I had a bit of a loose structure to it. I kind of meandered there, and I want to get to a more structured thing where I can handle more topics a little more concisely. But it's a work in progress. We're always moving onward and upward around here. So thank you once again for joining me live on the show tonight. I am Jimmy Ruffian. This has been the Rough Report. Stay rough.